Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com and Weiss Advice here on YouTube. I've got a busy week, but I wanted to tune in quick with a nice little tip that I think can universally help if it's something that you've never really thought of before. So in this video, I'm going to be putting a distortion on a vocal because I want to kind of give it a vibe of something a little bit dusty and a little bit dirty. But of course, I put distortion on all sorts of things: bass guitar, acoustic guitar, vocals, reverb returns, anything, drums, drum bus, room for distortion on everything. So one of the things that's tricky about distortion is that it is gain sensitive, and so you can get a lot of different sounds if you have a particularly dynamic source. I'm going to demonstrate that and then show you the remedy for this. It's really easy, really simple, and it's going to get you much better results with distortion very quickly. All right, let's play a little bit of where we're starting from here.
Hey, it wasn't easy, cause once you make a niggas think it's all breezy. The street life, I just wanted it to leave me. I had to just embrace it in order for it to feed me. Hey, it wasn't true. I could've chosen the thing that I want to. Lost my brother right before my dream would come true. Screw would always tell me, be careful what you respond to.
So it's a decent sounding vocal, could use a little bit more low end. There's a cool texture in the top, it's pretty smooth in the mids, but maybe could use a little bit of sculpting in the mids if I were to go about a traditional approach. However, I don't think I really want a traditional approach. I feel like the beat is kind of a little sloppy. It's a little bit like sloppy in a good way. Like it's kind of a little carefree, and it really just kind of feels the way it feels, and it's got like a sort of, not necessarily like dirt or distortion in it, but it's got this kind of like very straight off the MPC kind of a vibe to it. So I kind of want to roll with that and maybe do something that's a little bit embellished or a little bit indulgent or just a little bit specific to this sound. So here's what I came up with so far. I'm going to turn my effects I'm going to turn my effects on and play it one more time.
Hey, it wasn't easy, cause once you make a niggas think it's all breezy. The street life, I just wanted it to leave me. I had to just embrace it in order for it to feed me. Hey, it wasn't true. I could've chosen the thing that I want to. Lost my brother right before my dream would come true. Screw would always tell me, be careful what you respond to.
So you notice when I do that, two things happen. First of all, the vocal gets a lot of character. It has a very specific sound to it now. The second thing that happens is the vocal starts to kind of blend more with the record. It almost bounces better because it feels like the vocal belongs with the actual track. Now, there's a little bit of crustaciousness that maybe I would want to work out and fine-tune, but I'm going to be able to do that because of this very specific technique. It's not even really a technique, it's just knowing that this helps. So I am going to bypass the first effect that I have on my vocal. The very first effect that I have on my vocal is a compressor. Now I'm going to play it again.
Hey, it wasn't easy, cause once you make a niggas think it's all breezy. The street life, I just wanted it to leave me.
You pretty quickly notice two things. One, obviously, we're hitting the distortion harder because we're not doing any kind of gain reduction anymore, but there are very specific words and syllables now that are hitting the distortion very, very hard.
Hey, it wasn't easy, cause once you make a niggas think it's all breezy.
Certain words like all, it hit the distortion and really fuzzed out. If I have that happening, it's going to be really hard to fine-tune the distortion to be exactly the color that I want because it's going to be constantly shifting, and this is going to be true on anything that's particularly dynamic, so, this applies across the board. So the very first thing that we want to do when we're doing a distortion effect is we want to really control our peaks and really get our level even, and so this is one of those cases where it's really good to start with compression. Now, just to answer the question, what about EQ? It kind of depends on the vibe of the distortion that we want. If we want something that feels a little bit more like hot to tape or like hot to a console kind of distortion, I would say no. I would not put EQ in there because all of those EQ aberrations that are happening start to play with the distortion and create something that's very colorful. If we want a very controlled distortion, something where we're going for something very specifically stylized and slick, I would say yes, we would probably also want to do our EQing in front of the distortion and then do a second pass of EQing after the distortion, just so that we can control any kind of resonances that might kind of activate the distortion and start to kind of ring harmonically and create some colors that maybe are a little bit too in flux, I guess, so to speak. So I'm going to throw my compressor back on here, and I want to point out the settings. Very fast attack, pretty slow release. This is actually, I think, kind of the standard, almost default. Typically soft knee, using a ratio that's on the higher side. So really, it's the difference here is the ratio is not default anymore. It's closer to 5.5 to 1, where it normally defaults to 4 to 1. But basically, we want to do as much control as we can get away with.
Ay, it wasn't easy, cause once you make a niggas think it's all breezy. The street life, I just wanted it to leave me. I had to just embrace it in order for it to feed me. Ay, it wasn't true.
And so now we get that same kind of distortion feel across the entire vocal.
Ay, it wasn't easy, cause once you make a niggas think it's all breezy. The street life, I just wanted it to leave me.
And now it's going to be really easy to fine tune. If I think that that's a little bit fuzzy, I can just take this little preamp control. I think it is too. I think I'm going to back it off ever so slightly.
Ay, it wasn't easy, cause once you make a niggas think it's all breezy. The street life, I just wanted it to leave me. I had to just embrace it in.
That was a subtle difference, but I already miss it. You know what? Let's keep it fuzzy. Fuzzy is good.
Ay, it wasn't easy, cause once you make a niggas think it's all breezy. The street.
Cool. So I wanted to point that out. Nice, easy, quick one right here. We're going to wrap it up. If you dig this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, hit subscribe with the bell notification. If you want to get really in-depth with distortion and saturation, I have a full-length for sale tutorial. Well, two actually, mixing with distortion and mixing with saturation. They are bundled together, and the link to that is in the description below. Basically, anything you've ever wanted to know about distortion and saturation is covered in those two tutorials. Plus, if you happen to have Isotope Trash 2, it comes with some presets, and I think that's pretty nifty, so check that out. And lastly, you know what we say here at Weiss Advice, we are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.